Travelers, and welcome to another episode of Tales of Teyvat, a Genshin Lore Podcast. Last week, we talked about Scaramouche, the Wanderer, and everything that comes in between. Rumor has it Scar is currently going through some etiquette training with Nahida to learn to be with the people, but we're hoping she'll let him out one day soon so we could see him again. This week is our Season 1 finale, and what better topic to finish it off with a bang than the Cataclysm?
Literally.
But don't worry, we'll be back with more lore and fun for Season 2 starting on March 15th. Additionally, I want to remind our travelers to visit talesofteyvat.com to see visual representations of the lore mentioned during today's podcast. Your guides have put them together for you to make things a little easier to understand. On our site, you can also find some awesome goodies, including artist spotlights from the community for each episode, wallpapers for download, and a way to check out some of our favorite Genshin merch. Finally, feel free to email us at talesofteyvatpod@gmail.com to let us know what you thought of this week's episode and what topics you'd like to see next season. But yeah, all right, the Cataclysm.
We made
Cataclysm. When you think Cataclysm, what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
it. Cataclysm.
No, both of you. No.
I think of those boxes and that whole, the red thing of all like the things falling all over the place.
I'm the box ghost.
Mayhem.
Death, and dying.
Death, destruction, and boxes.
Speaking of boxes, travelers, I have recently moved, so I'm sorry if my audio is weird.
That sounds fine.
Yeah, you sound fine.
Still, just in case. Also, I need to curse everybody with the box ghost. They're gonna steal your boxes and everything you have in there. So open your boxes.
Damn, Danny Phantom.
I was like, I have no idea what she's talking about right now.
Oh my god, from the hit Nickelodeon show Danny Phantom, where his family curses him and he becomes half a ghost, but they also just want to murder all ghosts. And he's like, oh shit, can't let my family find out.
I am too old to watch that show.
Wait, hold up. He didn't get cursed.
He was experimented on. The Fatui experimented on him.
Our next podcast will be about that show.
About Danny Phantom and Danny Phantom only. No.
Yes. So, and then we'll start a podcast just for Buffy.
Yes. So I think it'd be really important before we really jump into the Cataclysm to give a brief overview of the timeline surrounding the Cataclysm. So maybe what happened a few hundred years before and a few hundred years after, to really give us some context for the rest, how this fits in with the rest of the season and the rest of the topics we've talked about. So are we safe to say that the primordial one descending to Teyvat is number one? Or is it the Seelie ancestor marrying an outsider and getting banished? Which one came first? Chicken or the egg?
I think we know that the primordial one created humanity, so it really just becomes
the chicken or the egg.
But we also know that the elemental realm, the 7 elemental dragons were into that before people.
I would say the elemental realm probably first, and then the primordial one who probably came and separated those realms, because we know we can touch into the elemental realm, and the abyss is its own realm that was a part of it, separated it, created humans. Probably at the same time the moon princesses were ruling. More than likely the dragons were first and then the primordial one.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, because the primordial
What if the primordial one is a dragon?
Oh, that'd be cool.
I'm just going to confuse everything. I am confusion entirely.
Look, you know me and dragons. I can't help it.
So we're going to start off with saying that we had our 7 elemental dragons first, and then the primordial one came down and kind of divided everything up into the different realms. And that's how we get humanity here. And then we kind of run into the issue of, okay, we have humanity and a bunch of random stuff starts happening. We have the moon princesses being destroyed and the Seelie ancestor being banished. And at the same time, or maybe right afterwards, we have the second who came coming down, fighting with the primordial one and sinking Enkanomiya into the ground.
Sounds good.
Yes.
So far?
Yep.
Yeah. And I would say that I believe that the light / elemental realm and the abyss / void realm have always been together, sort of diametrically opposed to each other and kind of exacting an opposite force to each other. And that the primordial one came with their shining shades and defeated the 7 sovereigns, and they sort of built the human realm on top of the light elemental realm. And so now it's like you got the light realm and then you have the human realm built on top of it, and they're both at odds with the encroaching abyssal realm that we're constantly having to deal with.
Right. Okay. So then Enkanomiya gets sunk to the ground and humankind kind of starts to prosper a little bit. I think we have some of our smaller areas getting attacked. We have Salvinur, which is the place living on the people of Dragonspine, pre-Dragonspine. We have Old Mondstadt, which was ran by Decarabian. And I think at this point, we're kind of starting to run into the Venti storyline, if I'm not mistaken. And during the Venti storyline of Venti being a cute little wisp and befriending a bard who then dies. At the same time, I think so far as we know, at least, all the other gods are kind of thriving. Rukkhadevata is out dealing with like King Deshret and the goddess of flowers. And
I think Gooba went to sleep at this point too.
Gooba.
Oh my.
Gooba.
Gwoba went to sleep around this time.
So we have the stove god kind of depleting its energies out. We have in Inazuma, A and Makoto being dual archons together. Then we
have Istaroth hanging out somewhere.
Yeah, Istaroth, aka Paimon somewhere. Then we have the Archon War. And the Archon War happened about 1,000 years ago.
I believe so, yeah.
Either 1,000 or 2,000.
And just to clarify, so the primordial one comes, defeats the 7 sovereigns, creates, heaven and the earth for humanity's sake. And then at that point, this single unified civilization spans the world and flourishes. And Enkanomiya was a part of that. And then the second who comes to town and starts a big, scary war with the primordial one. And that causes complete disaster. And that's when Enkanomiya sinks into the ocean.
Right. And then that's when we get into our more human storylines and learning about the 7 archons who aren't the 7 archons yet, because they're just kind of gods vibing. And the Archon War happens, and that determines who's going to be the 7 archons. And during this Archon War, we see Guizhong die, and the Salt God dies.
Oh,
yeah, a lot of gods die. We know Zhao was running around eating gods in their dreams.
Tofu almond dreams.
Yeah, he's still like contracted with that other guy.
He's enslaved, basically.
Right. And at this point, too, I believe Ganyu is alive, because Ganyu's almost born, because she didn't know Guizhong.
Yeah, she didn't know Guizhong.
Right. Okay.
But yeah, so like I think the whole street rambler. Thank you. I just learned it. I almost forgot it.
AKA Madame Ping.
Yeah. I think that whole shebang was going on before Ganyu.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think they were alive at the same time, but she was just kind of young and shy or something.
Being picked on by Cloud Retainer.
Right.
Yeah, she wasn't part of the OG clan.
Not yet. Yeah. And so at this point, during the Archon War, we have a lot of death. We have a lot of crazy things, and we can connect, like Brandon said, some of these storylines back to Zhao and Zhongli, who are some of our main playable characters. But by the end of the Archon War, Teyvat has chosen 7 Archons to rule over Teyvat, and they all have their own nations. So that is when Venti, Zhongli, A and Makoto, Rukkhadevata, and the unknown other gods from Fontaine and Atlan, and then the Saritsa come into power. There's a lot of confusion in this timeline of when visions happen. I know we think visions might have been happening during the time of Leonard from last episode, R.I.P.
Lenny boy.
But we're not really sure if Leonard, like if when Venti created Musgrave. So we're like, was that before or after the Archon War? We're not 100% sure, I don't think.
Yeah, I don't know. We know that Leonard was obsessed with trying to climb Pylos Peak 2,000 years ago, but we don't know when he died or when it turned into Musgrave.
That must be before the Archon War then, because the Archon War was, I think, 1,000 years ago.
Probably, yeah.
But so after the Archon War, things seem to kind of settle down in Teyvat until the Cataclysm. We'll talk about that in a second. But post-Cataclysm, we do see the fall of the Viridescent Venerer, who we've talked about, the Bloodstained Knight. We see a lot of destruction across Teyvat. And somewhere between right before the Cataclysm starting and now, we've arrived.
Yes. And the Fatui was started right after the Cataclysm as well. Right.
And there's some theories that maybe we were around well before the Cataclysm, but those are probably just kind of crack theories. I mean, we do know that our twin entered the records of Irminsul right around the time of the Cataclysm. So that sort of implies that we showed up right around then, but there's a few theories that might imply that they actually showed up a lot earlier than that, which we'll get into in a little bit.
And I no longer trust Irminsul.
Yeah.
For any there had been it was too easy for that to be tampered with.
Yeah.
Multiple times.
Easy. So easy.
So actually, let's not go into what happened after the Cataclysm, and let's talk about the Cataclysm, because I actually think that's more important. So the Cataclysm then happens in Conria. And for travelers who aren't aware, Conria is a human nation where they do not follow a god. Now,
they live underground. It's, if you haven't heard of Conria, you've been living under a rock, just like the people of Conria.
They're full dwarves. Full dwarves.
Yeah, so Conria is located somewhere underground. If you believe in my crack theories, I think that when you go to the Thousand Winds extension site, which is that island you can fly out really far to and get an achievement for, I think that the stairs there lead you down to Conria, but that's just my vibe. I could be wrong. But Conria is somewhere underground. We're not sure where. And
I have a theory that it's actually in the chasm. And I have one glaring thing of why I think that it's actually down there. If you look at the Teyvat interactive map on Hoya Lab, it is the only place on the entire map that has a little glowy, purple thing.
That's true.
In the middle of the chasm.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's the main portal.
Isn't there some old lore about the chasm that a meteor crashed into the earth a long, long time ago, and then it was ripped back out after it had been there for a long time? So it ripped out and created this giant hole.
Yeah, so the theory I remember reading online about that is that a meteor, like you said, landed, but a lot of people say that the shape of the meteor and everything would actually match the shape of Celestia. So, and we hear a lot about descenders who are people that aren't from Teyvat that came down. So there's a lot of thoughts around the fact that maybe the first descender, who is the primordial one, crashed down in a Celestia meteor and then was able to kind of throw it back up into the sky for the rest of the gods of Celestia to live on. And
so that would have been the part of the chasm that was removed?
Well,
yeah.
In the actual hole?
Floating in the sky.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, the idea isn't that it was a part of the chasm. The idea is that it was a giant rock that fell down and then created the chasm. Okay. And then when it was lifted back up, the shape of the external chasm was created. So the above ground part. And I will say, I brought up the interactive map. And it does look very much like that spiral that we kind of see at the bottom of Celestia. And what I think is really interesting about that theory, Tiff, as well, just to kind of throw it out there, is that in the underground section of the chasm, we find another ancient city that has been destroyed. And that city seems very comparable to Conria. For our travelers who don't know, Conria was very well known for its technology. They actually created ruin guards, and they were actually protectors for Conria. So they didn't have gods, but they had ruin guards and ruin golems. That shit's scary.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think that's a really interesting point.
But the I think there is a part in that Chasm quest where someone mentions that the architecture or something of the civilization that was there before looks like it could even predate Conria. So I always took that as being a part of the grand civilization that lived before the second who came.
Oh.
But I don't know, because I like the theory that maybe there was a group of people living underground that was just like a part of the grand, like, unified civilization into that. And that, like, maybe there were some dwarves, Al, that were just hanging out underground. And then when shit hit the fan, that Conria decided to avoid the gods and to keep living underground and sort of rejected the gods at that point.
I mean, it would make sense. You see all these things happening, curses of gods getting angry and just, skynailing.
Right. Well, so that's the other part is, like, maybe a bunch of people went to live underground because they all got skynailed.
Yeah, that's true. It could be. It's again, the chicken and the egg thing. Were they skynailed and then they moved? I kind of have a feeling, because going back to our skynail in Salvandagnar, we have a lot of Norse and Scandinavian names, and we also have that in Conria. Did the people who escaped Salvandagnar after it was skynailed move underground to Conria?
Definitely possible.
I like that theory.
And I mean, there's no telling how many caverns are connected into everything, because the chasm has a lot of evidence of wall text talking about the Cataclysm and even earlier civilizations. So I wouldn't be surprised that there's a giant underground network, maybe of an entire world we don't know about, that, they survived, and they're like, you know what? Maybe we are the abyss. We're just underneath everything.
Wait, did you say on Dragonspine there's things that depict the Cataclysm?
No, in the chasm.
Oh, in the chasm. I know. I was so stuck on Salvigner, I guess. I was like, wait, what? Yeah, you're right. In the chasm, there's a lot of crazy shit. And there's some crazy shit like that over in Inazuma, too. Very similar paintings.
Yeah, in Inazuma.
And also,
in Economia.
An underground network is definitely not a stretch. I recently saw, and if I find it, we'll link to it, but I saw a creator who created a underground map for the Sumerian desert and how everything underground is connected over there. And oh my gosh, like, it's insane how you could basically travel completely from one side of the desert to the other. I did it by accident the other day. I was in the new area, and all of a sudden I was in the old area, and I was like, what the fuck? How did I get here?
Yeah.
Like, I was just exploring, trying to open chests. I was like, what the hell? So I definitely think that's all possible. Yeah. But let's take a step back and I just stick with Conria. So the Cataclysm happened about 500 years ago, and we know that Conria was a godless nation. They loved technology. They kind of chilled underground. And to be frank, there is no fact that shows us how the Cataclysm happened or why it happened. We all have our own theories, I think, about why the Cataclysm happened, though, right?
Yeah, I strongly believe that it kind of came down to Celestia being like, hey, why don't you have a god? You should have a god. And them being like, no, we don't want one. And then Celestia being like, well, you know what? Fuck you. Get out of here.
Fuck you.
Just like that.
You know what? You don't even deserve
that was actual verbiage that I found on a text.
They're like, you don't even deserve a sky now. We're just going to blow you up.
We're just going to get rid of you entirely. Oh, and whoever, all of you people who are left, we're going to curse you.
Oh, yeah. So we've talked a little bit, too, about the fact that Gold, or Rydendor, who is Albedo's master, might also be involved in creating some of the chaos of Conria. We also know that Durin was released out of Conria during the Cataclysm. And, poor Durin was in this Dream Lake state, think he was going to make friends, but he just terrorized Mondstadt instead.
Yeah, we know that the Cataclysm coincided with the curse of Conria and all these monsters that came through. And it's not just the hilly churls or abyss mages. It was also a bunch of insane monsters that were spilling in from all over Teyvat, because there are moments where it talks about them coming out of the chasm. There's the moment where they're spilling in through somewhere in Inazuma.
Yes.
Because that's when Chio stays behind to protect it while A goes to meet up with Makoto, who was at the Cataclysm site, I guess, in Conria. It all sort of originates in Conria for some reason, and we suspect that gold is probably involved. But there's other theories too. I mean, maybe it has something to do with the Moon Princesses or Istaroth.
Absolutely. I want to take a moment and talk about the gods and how each nation responded to Conria and the Cataclysm, because all the gods were summoned, like our 7 Archons were all summoned to Conria, but not all of them went. We know in Mondstadt, Venti actually stayed back with Dvalin to handle the Durin situation. And then we know in Liyue, we actually don't know if Zhongli went there or not. The assumption is that he did, but we don't know for certain. And I blame all of his contracts for that.
I mean, probably. I mean, we know also that Fontaine's Archon chose specifically not to go because they are, like, one of their values is justice. And for some reason, they believed what happened to Conria was justified.
Oh, that's interesting, especially since we know that the current god of Fontaine isn't the original god of Fontaine.
Exactly.
That's like a very interesting thought of, like, was that the OG god or the new god that did that too?
I think it was the newest one because they are older than Nahida, who was born right after the Cataclysm.
Yeah.
So they'd have to be at least older than the Cataclysm, regardless of how close in age.
And we also know that in Liyue with Zhongli, that at this point, he starts to write up his contracts, whether that be right after the Cataclysm or right before, with the Yakshas. Because, I actually think it's after the Archon Wars. Here, I want to throw out my theory. You guys tell me what you think. The reason I want to say that he signed the contracts after the Archon War is because Bodacious was already a Yaksha and he died in the chasm protecting Liyue from the abyssal monsters that were flooding out.
Yeah. The abyssal monsters would have been flooding out because of the Cataclysm.
Right. Yeah.
So, okay, I see what you're saying.
Okay, cool.
So there was no reason for the Yaksha to be down there if he didn't already have the contract. Okay.
So,
I don't know if the contract, I mean, maybe that is why, but he had also lost his mind, Bozacious, at that point, and just because of the karmic debt stuff. So he had, like, disappeared for, I want to say, like, a couple hundred years or something. And Zhao hadn't seen him. So when the Cataclysm happened, everyone started talking about this hero that showed up at the bottom of the chasm and was, like, holding off all these monsters. So yeah, I guess I'm always confused about these contracts because it is canon that there were contracts between the Yakshas and Zhongli.
Right.
So do you think that, like, even though he went crazy, he was still willed to go down into the chasm to fight?
I was under the impression that, like, sometime after the Archon War, Zhongli signed these contracts. Because after the Archon War, there were a lot of weird monsters that started showing up from, like, the remnants of the gods and, like, their dead bodies, which is such a weird thing to think about. And so I also think the contract had to have been set forth before the Cataclysm based on the cutscenes we've seen of Zhao peacefully and leisurely hanging out with the Yakshas. I don't think in their, like, enslaved. I don't know if they were all enslaved by the same people, but if they were all enslaved by that same, like, person or group, I don't think they'd be doing leisure time like that.
Right.
So I'm not 100% sure. I don't really remember 100% of the Bodacious lore. I kind of thought that
delicious.
Bosacious. I don't remember all the Bosacious lore exactly, but I was under the impression that he went down to the chasm and then went missing, and that's why Zhao hadn't seen him in hundreds of years. Because all of the Yakshas except for Zhao lost their minds.
No, I think he disappeared and then showed up. Yeah.
Okay.
And I only say that because I just re-listened to that episode the other day.
Yeah. Okay. So we have that going on in Liyue. So the Yakshas are trying to fight off these abyssal monsters. We have Bodacious.
Bodacious.
We have Bodacious and the other human, Yalan's ancestor, kind of fending monsters off down there. And in Azuma, Makoto follows the call and goes to Conria, while A and Chiho are... It's Chiho, right?
Yeah, Chiho.
And Chiho are stuck in Inazuma fighting abyssal monsters that are coming out. And like Brandon said earlier, we really don't know where in Inazuma these monsters are coming from. But once A realizes that Makoto has left, Shie puts Chiho in charge and leaves to go find Makoto, but is too late. And then meanwhile, in Inazuma, we find out that Rukkhadevata...
Did you say Inazuma? I think you meant Sumeru.
Oh, she actually doesn't go to Conria and follow the call. She actually goes to Irminsul as a way to protect Sumeru and also protect all of Teyvat, because Irminsul is actually being like infected again with the forbidden knowledge, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like as soon as the Cataclysm starts, this forbidden knowledge contamination that you learn about in Sumeru, it immediately started coming back after they had sort of gotten rid of most of it, a few hundred years before that. And then as soon as the Cataclysm starts, it starts like rushing back in.
Okay. And Rukkhadevata actually like gives her life basically at Irminsul and creates Nahida out of Irminsul, and a little baby Nahida is born.
Our little sprout.
Which starts our little bird's terrorized life in the birdcage.
Not the bird cage.
Al said that Fontaine's god didn't go, and we really don't know about Natlan and the Saritsa, not yet at least.
Right.
So we kind of have like a little bit of a painting of what's going on in each of these nations as the Cataclysm is unfolding. But back in Conria, shit is hitting the fan. And we really don't know the immediate reactions of anyone down there either. It's all really a mystery.
It's a good point, is to say that there is so much mystery around it. It's been vague in all the stories, like most likely on purpose. We're going to assume that it's going to be a grand thing that we'll find out, at the end or whatever. But yeah, there's little bits and pieces that you find out about all of this stuff in like relics and swords, and it's kind of crazy how it's really like deep in there. Like there's a lot of assumptions because there's not a lot of info.
Yeah, right? And we're led to believe that our twin, because of the Cataclysm, and is so horrified by it, that they have become inspired to join and not just join, but to lead the Abyss Order and sort of a war cry against Celestia.
And you gotta really think that Celestia is really kind of crap if you're joining the Abyss Order.
Right?
I mean, we saw what they did to the upside down god statue.
Right.
Yeah. Just on creepy factor alone.
Absolutely.
And we've talked about abyssal energy corrupting characters like Child. So that's another piece of it too, is that our twin could be sort of contaminated or poisoned by this abyssal energy, because we do know that they go through portals in and out of the abyss, which means that they are in danger of becoming corrupted. So it's kind of strange because we don't know for sure how much our twin is just passionately like, we have to make a stand against Celestia, and then how much our twin is being contaminated and infected by this outside force.
Yeah, especially, I think the Archon Chasm, like the Dainsleif Chasm quest, really bears a lot of questions to that thought too, because we actually see like a flashback of our twin, or we see our twin, and they're trying to do something to bring back the homeland, he says. Oh, for me, he says, because I play as Lumine. But it's also interesting because in the latest Archon quest with Skara, he brings up that the Jester actually lived with our sibling for a little bit in Conria, and that Piero was, what was he? He was a royal...
The royal mage.
Oh, I was going to say mage, but then I was thinking of like the abyss mages, and I was like, nah, that's not right.
You're like, his legs are too big.
He's too thick to be an abyss mage. So that's really interesting to look at. because we're being told that our sibling lived in Conria for long enough for Piero to say that they worked together and they knew each other. So it is a good question of like, how long was the Abyss Twin there? And would they have considered Conria their second home, or would they have been leaving? Or would they be dealing with the abyssal corruption? And there's a part of me too that thinks that they may have been like using the Abyss Twin as like a god in Conria, because like we are an angel or of something. So
Yeah, don't they call the Abyss Twin the prince or the princess?
yeah, they do. Which doesn't that kind of go back to people saying that like Dainsleif and like the Traveler were dating?
Possibly. I mean, we know that they're royalty, just
Right.
like Piero. To me, that means that the timeline still doesn't make sense, and that we're missing something. Because
Wait,
how did we come from a different world, and then all of a sudden our twin is royalty in this underground nation?
wait, how is Pierre, is a royal mage mean you're royalty? What is a royal mage?
Well, I just assumed they meant part of the royal clan that ruled Conria, the Eclipse dynasty.
Yeah, or it could be just someone who's part of court and is designated as like the royal mage or like the
Mhm.
royal captain of the guard.
Yeah, like Dainsleif is part of the royal guard, but he's not actually royalty. He's
Mhm.
a servant to them.
Yeah.
And do we all agree that Piero's Kaya's dad? Are we all on the same like agreement with that one?
I think we all want
Yeah.
that to be true.
Yeah, I think so.
I don't know. I want his dad to be dead so he doesn't have to make a decision.
Oh my, here,
Ooh.
it's that part of the show again.
Who does Feeny want to die?
Feeny
this
and her
week?
men.
I just want Kaya to not have to decide between his birth father and his adopted family. That's all. Also, who the hell is Kaya's mom?
The more you keep asking people to die, you know Mahoyo is listening and they're gonna kill Albedo.
Shut up.
They're gonna turn him evil and we're gonna have to kill
Oh
him.
my god, I see so much art about him being evil, like him getting like possessed by Durin's blood and the abyssal power. Stop. That's my nightmare.
blood.
But since we're on the topic of Albedo, I would like to give out my episode or two reminder that Albedo was not around during the Cataclysm. He was not created yet, just so you all know. We don't know when he was created, but he wasn't created during the Cataclysm.
But he was created by Reindotter, aka Gold.
Yeah, that bitch. I
But
hate
are you
her.
saying that he was created before or after?
After. I forget exactly where I read it, but he's younger than Durin. He actually never met Durin.
Oh.
Yeah,
okay.
and that's why
Well,
I
that's
think
interesting because I feel like they don't really give us anything about where Gold was after the Cataclysm happened.
yeah, all we know is that at some point Gold and Albedo went exploring together.
Oh yeah, they were looking for like a artifact or something, right?
So yeah, all we know is that Albedo and Gold were out one day, like they went exploring together, and on their one adventure, they were in the heart of a dungeon and they discovered an artifact known as the Heart of Nibirius. And not much is known about that. We just know that afterwards, Gold disappeared. We do know that Nibirius is a demon and a Marquise of Hell in the Ars Goetia, who typically takes the form of a three-headed dog or a raven. So maybe it was Oz's heart. I don't know. But basically, Gold, like when they found the heart, was like, peace out, Albedo. Go find the answers of the world. Tell me what it really means. Go live with Aunt Alice. Bye. And she like
Right.
disappeared. And Albedo was like, okay. He has some abandonment issues.
I have a feeling I know what it was, which I'll get to when we get into our theories. But I was going to say, while we were on the subject of the Abyss Twin being in the royal court or guard or something, what if the whole story about the Seelie princess falling in love with someone, what if that was supposed to be Lumine?
Or
Yo.
an Abyss Twin.
Yo. Hold up.
Or it could be Lumine even if they became the Abyss Twin for a different reason. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true.
Wait, hang on. I'm going to throw something crazy out there for you guys. What if Lumine and Aether are the children of a human and the Seelie princess? And they, when we first saw them in the opening cutscene, they were trying to get revenge against the primordial one for cursing them.
I mean,
Yeah.
It's definitely a possibility, but I feel like we wouldn't be a descender then.
I mean, technically, wouldn't the Moon Sisters be descenders? Because they're not from Teyvat, they're from the moon.
Could be.
Yo, there is no evidence. I have nothing to back this up. It was just something I thought.
We don't. How many descenders are there? We know
4, at least.
That's what I was gonna say. We know we're 4, but do we know if there's more than us?
There probably is, because like because Nahida said we're the 4th descender. I feel like there's gotta be more, because 4 is just an odd number.
I mean, there's definitely a 2 and a 3.
There's definitely a 2 and a 3.
But they also, when they say descender, they could also be talking about more than one person.
Exactly. Because I think we confirmed in the Skara episode that it's like our twin is really our twin. It was just, some fucky alt-delete shit in our Soul. I think a lot of it could be descenders are perhaps a way to designate eras of Teyvat. And so we're the 4th descender, the 4th major era of Teyvat's history. So it could be more of an allegory.
Plus, we know that the primordial one had 4 shades.
Exactly.
So that's assuming the primordial one is considered a descender, which I guess we don't really know. And I was going to bring this up as well, is do we think for sure that the sustainer of heavenly principles is the primordial one?
No, I don't know.
I don't think so. I think they were the second who came. Question. Okay, descend from the heavens. If we go through that, what if all of these descenders are the shades that descended from the primordial one to reign on earth? Or Teyvat. So perhaps we were the last part of it, and for some reason it's very specific in how it does it in the timeline, and perhaps the second who came, which I don't know if that's been confirmed that they were a descender or not.
I feel like they have to be, right? Like the second who came, where did you come from? I'm just saying.
Just be a dude if you're not.
And I feel the same about the primordial one. Like they came down and like destroyed the 7 sovereigns who are like the natives of the land. What a bitch move. I think they're all descenders.
How European.
I was just gonna say it's all just like a comparison to the English settlers of America.
Absolutely.
All fucked. But
I know, so we've had, just to remind you all of some of the wacky theories we've had in the past, we have theorized that the unknown god is gold, that sustainer of heavenly principles is the great sinner. We talked about the battle pass cutscene, talking about, and part of that theory is that gold is the heir to the celestial kingdom who becomes the great sinner because they forget who they are when they retrieve the Genesis pearl from the kingdom of darkness.
Right.
If gold is part of that, do we think she might actually be descended from Conrian royalty? Oh wait, that goes into the incest thing of like Kaya and Albedo.
Yeah, that's where you get into the idea that Kai and Albedo could be brothers, basically.
I'm thinking she's just like the princess of Celestia.
Ooh, okay.
And that she forgets.
That gold is the princess?
Yeah, that's what that theory is saying.
Oh, okay.
And then Al, you and I had a shared theory that gold is Lumine older or time traveled.
Right, that's right. We did have that. I do like that.
Feeny, you think the unknown god is one of the moon princesses, you did at one point, and that it's possible that the Outlander, this is the theory I was just saying actually, is the one who fell in love with the Seelie ancestor and could be the traveler or the twin. So that's another theory. I thought maybe Paimon is one of the moon sisters or a Seelie, which we brought that up several times before. A fun crack theory is that the person playing the game is the primordial one, and that's why Paimon looks at you when you pause it. She like looks into the camera and breaks the fourth wall. That the unknown god could be the original god of the light or elemental realm, and that they were trying to take back what's rightfully theirs.
Okay.
A dragon, you mean?
Yeah. But it could also be the second who came. And I still get really kind of iffy and confused on if I think that sustainer of heavenly principles is the primordial one or the second who came. I feel like it's more likely they're the second who came. But then who is the primordial one? And why do they have 4 shades?
Why Why do they have 4 shades?
Feeny thinks that the 4 shades could be Istaroth as the shade of the human realm. The unknown god is the shade of the light realm, and gold is the shade of the abyss realm. And then the primordial one is the 4th shade.
Yeah, I think that's it. I'm pretty good with that.
And then maybe that if Lumine is a time looped unknown god, that maybe that sort of like I was saying a few minutes ago, that maybe that can be canon, and that the reason that they became that changes, even if you're playing as Aether versus Lumine. I think that's a fun idea that most of us never think about. We always just assume like it's going to be the other twin for the same reason. But what if it's not? Like if you're playing as Lumine, you become the Abyss Queen to save Aether, whereas if you're playing as Aether, she becomes the Abyss Queen because of something else. And then Tiff brought up this theory back in episode 8. Oh, I had one more, that the unknown god is Aether and Lumine's mother. But Tiff brought up this theory in episode 8 that she read about, which is that the unknown god is a character named Kiana from Honkai Impact.
Oh God, not the Honkai Lore.
Let's do this. Open the can of worms, bees.
The can of worms. It is a big ass can of worms. It is like
oh my God.
I don't like that. I somehow feel like I started the can.
You did, and you didn't even know it.
You bought it at the store. Yeah. It's like when you buy canned bread for the first time, and you're like, "What is this?" And it just keeps coming out, and you're like, "What the hell?" That's what I said.
Do any of you know much?
I know from our conversations through Discord of the giant theory we have put together, but that's it.
Let me just go over some basic terms. Are we ready to talk about theories?
Yeah, what? I don't even know the plot of Honkai.
So Honkai Impact the third is about... I know the third is so weird, but it's basically about the cycle in which humanity keeps getting wiped out by this strange, malevolent power called Honkai. And the Honkai
sounds like Sin in Final Fantasy X.
Possibly, I haven't played that, but yeah, it's kind of like it's a energy or a will. Mm-hmm. It's not like a physical beast, even though it can create physical beasts.
Okay,
but the energy or will that hates humanity, and it seeks to destroy it out every time civilization reaches a certain point in their advancement or evolution, basically. Mm-hmm. And it can do all these crazy things, like it can possess humans, it can make people into zombies, it causes erosion, which is a word that we've heard used in Genshin before.
Yeah.
It can kill people, and it can create monsters just called Honkai beasts, which are just these funny looking monsters. And it's just this malevolent energy. It's usually also has a core, which from what I read, it's kind of vague of what that actually is. Keep in mind, by the way, so much of the stuff that I'm reading about Honkai, like these websites that I'm reading about it on, you can tell that whoever wrote it, English might not be their first language in some cases. And there's so much Honkai lore. Like we think that Genshin has a lot of lore. It's like a drop in the freaking ocean compared to Honkai.
Because Honkai has like bubble worlds.
Well, they also have like all these mangas and everything. So there's just way more story and character. But
it makes sense because I mean it has been out longer, so they've had time.
True. Yeah.
But
and I guess it's actually really popular overseas.
Oh yeah. Like Genshin is small fries compared to Honkai Impact. The third.
Yeah, that's the vibe that I'm getting as I'm like looking into stuff. And I do want to do more research, but just to give some more basic information and concepts that is going to blow your mind a little bit. So in the world of Honkai, they have these two opposing forces, which are called the Imaginary Tree and the Sea of Quanta. And the Imaginary Tree and the Sea of Quanta are always at odds with each other. It sounds a whole lot like the light / elemental realm versus the void realm / abyss.
Mm-hmm. Or even Irminsul is on like a sea of stars.
Yeah, a lot of people talk about the Imaginary Tree being tied to Irminsul, but basically it's their creation myth for their game of the Sea of Quanta and the Imaginary Tree have always been around, essentially. that, or at least as far as people know, and that the Sea of Quanta is always trying to drown the imaginary tree, while the imaginary tree is always trying to outgrow the Sea of Quanta. And the tree contains a multiverse, which is different universes that grow on the tree as leaves. And when a universe fails to thrive for whatever reason, that leaf falls off of the tree and into the Sea of Quanta.
Okay.
So that can get into a lot of theories about the void realm / the abyss. And like, we see so much of the void sort of creeping in to that throughout the game.
Right.
And maybe that's because we're in a bubble universe that fell off of the freaking imaginary tree. And now the Sea of Quanta is trying to infiltrate our world. A couple other concepts that you should know. There are people in Honkai that become possessed by the will of the Honkai power. And that means that they basically become the Honkai's avatar and they're hellbent on destroying humanity.
Oh
and these are called Hershers. And they usually have some type of Honkai core within them that develops over time and then also slowly turns the infected person into this hateful, scary, murderous Hersher, and makes them more and more powerful too as it grows. These seem to be referred to as gems in the game, which I thought was interesting. And you already know who I think is the freaking Hersher in Genshin. It's gold. And
it's gold.
It's gold. It's gold. And like the Genesis Pearl, that's the freaking Honkai core. And it corrupted her and turned her evil and then caused her to try to tear the world apart. Each of the Hershers has their own sort of special name in the game, and there's a bunch of different ones. But the one that I wanted to talk about is the main character of Honkai Impact, who is Kiana Kazlana, who Tiffany mentioned way back in episode 8. She's also technically this character named Siren, but most people call her Kiana, and her Hersher name is Hersher of the Void.
Okay.
Now, a couple other things. There are these things called divine keys in Honkai, and these are weapons or devices that are made by humans usually that are using the Hersher cores from people that have been like Hershers that have been defeated.
So a keyblade. A keyblade.
And they have their own special powers and their own special names. And the one that I wanted to bring up, the divine key that I think is really interesting for us, is the key to infinity. And that particular one has the power to create and traverse bubble universes. Oh, and guess whose Hersher core that one was made from? Kiana.
Isn't there a bubble world named Sumeru?
Yes, there is a bubble universe created by this character named Sue, and he created that universe using that same divine key, Kiana's key, and it's called the Seed of Sumeru.
What?
Let's go.
And we don't really know much about it other than it's this bubble universe that someone created, this really powerful character created. I couldn't find a whole lot about it. It's called the Seed of Sumeru.
Are we just in Sue's world?
That's what it kind of seems like.
Oh,
and also it would explain why Kiana could be the sustainer of heavenly principles, because, by the way, if you haven't looked up what that character looks like, it looks just like her.
It's insane, honestly. It does really look just like her.
She has a few different looks based on different like costumes and like things that she goes through in the game, but like her evil god look is the sustainer, and people that have worked on the game have even sort of hinted that it could be her.
I love the theory, but I hate it.
Okay, it gets even more wacky.
Okay.
So there are these other things called ether anchors.
Stop it.
And these are devices that somehow hold a universe together. Like if it's a universe with a certain set of laws, these ether anchors will hold them together somehow. Kind of like
ley lines?
Well, I'm thinking they could be possibly tied to the sky nails, because they can also be used, it says, to travel between like a main world within Honkai and other bubble universes. But either way, it's something that can be used to hold a universe together. And I feel like the things that we've read about the Sky Nails is that is one of the popular theories about them, that they could be used to sort of hold the Abyss back from Teyvat.
Okay.
And so that would make sense if they were using an ether anchor, and maybe Traveler and Sibling, maybe they were able to use one to actually come to Teyvat in the first place, or maybe the Sustainer used them. And I'm also wondering if maybe that is tied into what created the Cataclysm. But one other thing, there's also this thing called Project Arc, and this was a plan that was enacted by one of the previous eras of humanity and the world of Honkai. And so they were basically like, we keep getting wiped out by these evil gods, essentially, and we need to try to save ourselves from going extinct. So to avoid extinction, they created this Project Arc thing, which basically they sent a spaceship out to go find other worlds for humanity to inhabit. And then they never heard from it again after it got sent out. And I think I read something where they even had like the human genome like coded in it or something like that.
What?
Yeah. Well, okay. Wait. There's even more of a connection. Okay. So the world of Teyvat. Teyvat is a word specifically in Hebrew that means boat. What else is a boat? An ark. A-R-K. Noah's Ark. And I think the full translation, if you look in Hebrew, looking at Noah's Ark, it's Teyvat Noahs, or like something along those lines. It's we are the ark.
That's what it's. Yeah. See, this can create so many theories, because like maybe the people on Teyvat are the ark. But that to me makes me question, well, who are the gods and how did they get this god power?
The OG people.
And there's one other interesting tidbit is there was this other spaceship called the Moonlight Throne, and that spaceship, it was like a battleship and it had the power to change Honkai energy into regular energy, capable of use by humans. So that's like a fun theory. Like maybe Celestia is the Moonlight Throne spaceship and it's just disguised with magic or something.
Why? No. No. See, okay, here's my thing. Some of our travelers might know the Shade Chamber, which is another Genshin podcast. They are super cool people. They tweeted something the other day, and I just agree with it so much. They were like, don't tell us that after spending years trying to understand Genshin Impact's lore, we will now have to understand years among years of another game's lore. And then we joked about, they said they were going to jump off the Jade Chamber, and I said I was going to jump off of the Sky Nail in Dragon Spine. So, that's just, so crazy to me. Everything you said makes sense. It isn't a wild theory by any stretch.
Yeah, it feels very likely to be true that... there is no maybe. We know that Genshin takes place in the same universe as Honkai because they already confirmed that by showing us Dvalin in Honkai.
And I know you mentioned that once before, but what was Dvalin doing in Honkai?
What was he just hanging out?
What was he up to over there?
Trying to make friends.
No, that's Durin.
One of the characters in Honkai was looking, I guess, at images from the imaginary tree. So they were seeing all these different images of other places and other worlds. And one of those images was a little picture of Dvalin flying around.
Was this good Dvalin, evil Dvalin? I got a lot of questions now about Dvalin.
It was just Dvalin flying.
It was just flying.
It was pretty neat.
Yeah, just like a little Easter egg. And then they people that work on the show confirmed that was actually Dvalin. So we know that Teyvat is, unless there's some other big twist, that it likely is one of the bubble universes, or maybe it's still attached on the imaginary tree.
So how does Honkai then relate back to the Cataclysm?
That I would love to know that, because to me it would make sense if maybe the Cataclysm was the universe falling from the imaginary tree, or maybe someone used the ether anchor to establish a set of laws. But I think what's the most likely is that it was a Hersher just going evil and trying to erase humanity off of the planet.
Yeah, it's kind of intense.
Yeah, and I do think there's some like fishy stuff going on with time, like we've talked about. So my theory is that maybe, you know, the twins traveled to that via the imaginary tree after the Ark got there, like way before. And then that caused some kind of problem, and that maybe someone detached the world, like maybe using the ether anchor is what detaches the world from the tree to create the bubble universe. And then maybe that's why like the Abyss Twin originates during the Cataclysm, and according to Irminsul, because maybe Irminsul's rewrite came because they detached from the imaginary tree, which I think of in my brain as like a much larger version of Irminsul.
I'm just processing.
You know what I mean? Like maybe we rebooted the world when we did that.
Yeah, that makes sense. But
Which makes sense because when Nahida is performing her skills, she's jumping on a keyboard.
Mm-hmm.
Everything about her is about code. And the way
and you can have all these different bubbles too of like the same home universe, because I remember reading that like one of the characters shows this other Honkai character all these different versions of herself from different bubble universes.
Oh my God, I would hate that the idea that like the version of me in another universe is doing so much better.
Yeah, or like
they
maybe
just have
we're
to go take their life.
Maybe we really are stuck in a time loop, and the loop restarts with the Cataclysm every time.
Oh my God, that would be horrifying.
That's why the Abyss Twin is like obsessed with the Loom of Fate and trying to change fate, you know, and Bainsleaf.
That would also kind of make sense with the Archons. You know, we were just saying like, who are the Archons then? And it's like, well, Zhongli won't talk about anything because he has a contract. And we've realized very quickly that A also is a part of that contract.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and maybe Gold, if Gold isn't the sustainer of heavenly principles or one of the other theories, maybe that heart of whatever it was called, artifact thing.
Nibiria.
Yeah, maybe that was one of the divine keys, and that she used that to like travel out of Teyvat via the imaginary tree, or maybe she just created a new bubble universe with it.
I mean, it's possible, but I want to get to something real quick. As much as we have Honkai Impact and like what possibly caused the Cataclysm, and like we've yet to talk about the aftermath, the complete destruction and the curse of Conria.
Right. So then let's ease Amanda's brain and come out of the Honkai universe.
That's kind of why I wanted to bring it up. I feel like we lost y'all.
I'm just gonna say one quick thing though about the Honkai theory, which is that which is kind of what I was getting at with the contracts, is that it's totally possible that all the Archons caught on to what was happening if it was like us falling from the tree. And that's why they all have that contract, and why some of them have like suggested that we know them already. Because maybe you're right, B, maybe we are stuck in an infinite time loop where we keep resetting at the Cataclysm, and maybe kind of going into the idea of Dodoray, it's different versions of the Traveler every time. It's different fragments of the Traveler. And this happens to be whatever Traveler you are's journey trying to save everything.
Yeah, the actual main character, Kiana, she's the 247th, I think, version of herself.
Jesus.
Because someone was able to like create her over and over again until she became, I guess, whoever they wanted her to be. Because they were trying to, I guess, include certain DNA in her, which I think is why she's able to, you know, house the power of the Hersher of the Void or whatever.
Right.
It's really confusing.
All right.
That's
so back to Conria and back to Conria and just Teyvat, nothing else. Back to my safety, please. Al brought up, you know, what happens after the Cataclysm. So when the Cataclysm happens, Conria is completely destroyed. From as far as we're concerned, there's nothing left of Conria. Our sibling, the Abyss Twin, is devastated. Ruka Devada is dead. Nahida has been born. And Makoto is dead, and A is taking over. Dvalin and Venti have been poisoned by the blood of Durin, and they have gone to sleep. for who knows how long to heal, because that's how they're going to rejuvenate themselves. We also know at this point that Signora's boyfriend dies and she becomes Signora. We know that the Fatui is formed out of Piero, who becomes the first Fatui Harbinger, the Jester. So that also has a lot of questions. Like, how did he all of a sudden was Piero like, I have been living in a godless land, and now I'm gonna go live and honor the Tsaritsa of all things.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of questions there. We also know, and we could dive into details about all this and giving us kind of the bullet points. We know that possibly at this point, Kaya gets left in Mondstadt, or eventually at some point, Kaya's dad is like, peace out, Cub Scouts, save us, and leaves him to be bound by Crapus Ravenger. There's a lot. It's kind of intense.
Yeah, and then we also know that Ai starts making Scaramouche at that point too.
Oh yeah,
because she's so distraught, she makes a puppet so she doesn't have to deal with anything.
So she can go do therapy with the puppet.
Puppet therapy.
Oh no, that sounds so creepy.
But we also know the academia is starting to rise in Sumeru too, because they're keeping Nahida in the cage and starting to, use Rukkhadevata's Akasha system.
Mm-hmm.
That's all now happening.
Yeah, the sages who kind of were already in place prior to the Cataclysm have now taken control with Rukkhadevata gone. And they're like, this god's a baby. Lock him away. I'm like, what? Who does that? Who locks a god away? It bothers me.
Who locks away a baby?
I mean, I could understand.
Look at her. She's so cute.
I can understand locking a baby away.
But one's so cute.
Yeah, definitely.
She's got a swing.
Yeah, even more of a reason.
When she's not typing at you.
You brought up the fact that Nahida looks like she's coding earlier, Al, and so does Al Haytham.
Mm-hmm.
Al Haytham literally just brings code up in front of his eyes, and he's like, okay. And then he's like,
like
I got
in the Matrix,
keys.
just all of a sudden, just binary everywhere. No, but hang on. I had a thing. So we talked a bit about, the destruction of Conria, and the people are cursed, some asleep. A lot of the people have become Hilly Charles, or some are immortal and can't die. Like Dainsleif, he's corrupted by the curse. And of course, the Abyss, mages, Hilly Churls, all like the whole Churl family, the Lectors, and probably Kaya, though we think he might be safe from the curse for a bit.
Yeah, I feel like they let him go, like when they sent what's his face, Superman, down from
Clark Kent.
Yeah. No, what's his real name?
Clark Kent.
Cal?
Thank you.
Is that it?
Is this Smallville? Are we now in Smallville? Is this another leaf bubble?
This is.
Never mind.
So, I want to bring y'all back to one of the very first quests we do with Lisa, right?
My homie.
Our homie, our beautiful, boobalicious librarian.
Who just got a new outfit.
Oh my God. I'm sorry, I'm drooling here. But okay, so the book we're trying to find, this missing library book that's overdue, and Lisa's very wanting it to come back.
As a librarian should.
Is called The Pale Princess and the Six Pygmies. Very reminiscent to Snow White and the Seven Dwarves. But here's the thing. The Abyss Order is looking for that book specifically. And we're like, why? It's a fairy tale. Why the fuck would you ever need that? But because recently in Skara's Archon quest, right? The only way that Nahida remembers anything about Skara and like the events of what happened are through a children's story.
It's honestly the funniest part of this whole game.
Exactly. However, the thing is, these children's stories don't change because they're technically fiction, because it didn't happen. So Irminsul probably can't alt-delete that because it doesn't consider that part of the history. It's not like an actual recording of history. It's fiction alluding to something. So I think The Abyss was trying to find the exact fairy tale that shows them how to break the curse. And let me just read you the first volume thingy. In the distant past, the Night Mother ruled over the faraway land of night. Here, no light touched the earth, nor did a single tree grow, and there was no life here but the horrendous denizens of the dark. The Night Mother was the source of all sins, and the land of night was the embodiment of her evilness. The cruel Night Mother, who had neither heart nor mouth, was always watching the land of night, and her punishments were always unexpected. The only thing she could not bear was the occasional ray of moonlight that made it through the clouds. The light that penetrated the walls of darkness always irritated her. The Moonlight Forest was the only place free from the rule of the Night Mother. Only there could the people bask in the bright moonlight and enjoy the grace it brought to the living. Everyone in the kingdom of the Moonlight Forest was born with fair skin, light-colored hair, and bright blue eyes. Perhaps the constant lack of sunlight and the nourishment of the moonlight was the reason for their beauty, giving them an appearance different from the abhorrent creatures lurking at the edge of the forest. That's volume 1. We don't know where the other volumes are. The Night Mother could be gold.
Yeah. And it's also interesting because it's almost suggesting that Conria was in the same realm as the Abyss, and that,
or brought down to the Abyss.
Yeah, and where the Abyss was where she could not see. So
in the sea, down in the Sea of Quanta, you mean?
Yeah, but the only thing that helps them, the only thing that kind of gives them any source of joy or alleviation of the Night Mother is moonlight. And who do we know has a reference to moon? The Moon Princesses.
My favorite.
And Lumine.
Or Ether.
Or the spaceship that they rode in on.
No!
Called the Moonlight Throne.
No.
I really do think it's the children's stories. We got to pay attention to those, because without those, and if we can ever find any more volumes of the Pale Princess and the Six Pygmies, I think we're going to find the actual cure for the Conrian curse.
Does Clee's kid story count? She drew a really cute kid story.
Yeah, I think it's somewhat foreshadowing. I don't know.
Also, I just want to throw this out there, and I know I hate to be making the comparisons to Honkai myself, but it's interesting that you say spaceships, because doesn't Xingshou's book involve spaceships?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, where did he see a spaceship? As my eye starts to twitch uncontrollably.
You're not going to be able to sleep tonight.
I'm going to have nightmares. I'm going to be like, Albedo's evil, spaceships, falling off the tree, a bubble. Yeah, but I do think that is all the time that we have for today, unless anyone wanted to throw anything else out there. Any last minute thoughts?
I feel like I said enough.
I'm dead.
There will be a day we finally go into all connections of Honkai and Genshin.
Oh,
there will be an episode.
I'm going to veto it.
It might just be.
Yeah, I was going to say, tell me when it is. I'm going to be on vacation.
You know what?
Have nothing
it's
for
just going to
Honkai.
be us in a duo pod going through it.
Well, you and
be like the crackhead quick.
You and
my
B
God,
can
let's
have
do
your
it.
own short about the Honkai, which actually brings me, I do want to say that, this is the final episode of our very first season.
Season 1.
When we sat down over the summer and said we were going to do this, I don't think any of us realized how much fun it would be and how popular it might get. And we are so thankful to everyone who's been listening and following us and tagging along through some crazy crack theories every day and listening to me kill people off but simultaneously not want people to die. So we are so excited to be bringing season 2 to everyone. We will be launching season 2 starting March 15th, but don't worry, in the meantime, we will be releasing some content on our Instagram, Tales of Teyvat Pod, and on our Twitter, Tales of Teyvat. Additionally, we will be probably putting out a few little short pieces for you guys, so you won't be completely missing us, but we'll be putting out some more fun short things, not about Honkai. That could be done at a later time. But we're just super grateful and super excited to be bringing the next season to you. Please reach out to us or follow us on social media or at our email. Again, our email is talesteyvatpod@gmail.com. So let us know if you'd like to see more episodes. Are you interested in more Honkai lore? Because if you're interested in it, we'll give it very
I'm gonna make a little
reluctantly.
rule that puts all that in the spam folder.
Honkai immediately goes to spam.
Yeah.
Listen,
Well,
Tips
we
is
had-
the
We had to
webmaster.
do one episode on it. We just had
Just
to.
one. Just one.
Just what?
Give us the
For
crack.
now.
Give us the fucking bean.
The next drip marketing we get is going to end up being a character named Kiana, and we're all going to be like, me and Tiff are literally going to quit the podcast.
Yeah.
But with that being said, thank you all for listening to us this season, and we're so excited to bring you season 2 on March 15th. For now, travelers, safe journeys. We'll see you next time.
We love you, travelers. Thank you.
Bye, Honkai nerds.
No!